The baby in front of her was actually a princess. When the tyrant first laid eyes on her, he immediately harbored thoughts of disposing of the aunt who had raised her. Sensing the impending danger, the little princess instinctively tried to protect her aunt. With a determined expression, she stretched out her tiny hand and called out to the tyrant, "Dad." However, instead of dissuading him, her plea only seemed to intensify the murderous glint in his eyes. Realizing that her initial approach had failed, the little princess quickly devised a new plan. Summoning all her strength, she mustered her courage and approached the tyrant. With trembling hands, she clung to his feet, all the while repeating, "Daddy, Daddy." Taken aback by her unexpected gesture, the tyrant gently lifted her up and explained, "Ellie, you are mistaken. This man is not your father." Ellie and her aunt lived in a humble cottage on the outskirts of the kingdom. Their days were filled with meager meals and the constant struggle to make ends meet. Every evening, Ellie would reluctantly choke down her aunt's unappetizing concoctions, unable to bear the thought of disappointing her. Yet, the sight of the unpalatable green soup served in their meager bowls was enough to churn her stomach. Desperate to escape her aunt's culinary experiments, Ellie resolved to reveal her true identity as a princess. She yearned for the lavish feasts and delicacies served in the royal palace. With determination in her heart, she decided to take matters into her own hands and seek help. Summoning her courage, Ellie called upon a trusted ally to aid her in her quest for better food and a brighter future. Ellie, tasked by the elf shop to deliver her father's relics to the emperor, found herself amidst a sudden army arrival. The tyrant they encountered was none other than Ellie's own uncle, Tesha. Following her father's demise, Tesha had assumed control of the empire, but only those of royal lineage possessed the power to summon. In a bid to assert his authority, Tesha summoned the elf White Fox as proof of his royal status and insisted on taking Ellie back to the palace. Faced with the prospect of being separated from her beloved aunt, Ellie acted swiftly. Clutching onto her aunt's garments, she cried out, "Mom," compelling Tesha to include her aunt in their departure. Witnessing Ellie's determination to remain by her aunt's side stirred conflicting emotions within Tesha. The scene left Tessa grappling with a mix of emotions. Before she could offer a solution, Ellie's words pierced through the air, tugging at Tessa's heartstrings. With a heavy sigh, Tessa turned away, his footsteps echoing as he walked towards the door. Ellie's plea echoed in her mind, she wanted to be taken away, she didn't want to endure her aunt's cooking anymore. As Tessa reached the door, Ellie's voice resonated in her thoughts, urging her uncle to return soon. In a twist of fate, Ellie found herself transported through time, regressing to infancy. As a princess born into privilege, she had once known a life of opulence and grandeur. Yet, in her present reality, she resided in a humble and dilapidated abode. The stark contrast between her past and present circumstances weighed heavily on Ellie's heart. Despite her royal lineage, she endured the hardships of her modest surroundings, longing for the comforts of her former life. At home, Ellie only had her aunt to care for her, but the situation was far from ideal. Her aunt's cooking skills were lacking, resulting in unappetizing and even frightening meals. Ellie feared the possibility of falling victim to her aunt's cooking one day. Determined to escape this grim reality, she made the bold decision to reveal her hidden identity as a princess. Summoning her courage, Ellie sought the guidance of the elf Poo-Poo. She tasked Elf Poo-Poo with delivering a message to her tyrant uncle, urging him to come and reclaim her as a member of the royal family. However, in her eagerness, Ellie may have spoken too quickly, leaving Poo-Poo feeling dizzy and bewildered. Realizing her mistake, Ellie slowed down her speech, ensuring that Poo-Poo understood her instructions before setting off on her mission. After patiently waiting for half a month, Ellie's patience was finally rewarded when Poo-Poo returned with good news. Her uncle, the tyrant, had agreed to accompany Poo-Poo back to the palace. Overwhelmed with excitement, Ellie eagerly awaited her uncle's arrival. When he entered the room, she couldn't contain her joy. With a wave of her hand, she exclaimed, "Look here, I am your niece, princess." As Ellie met her uncle's gaze, her heart raced with anticipation. His gentle expression and handsome demeanor filled her with a sense of relief and belonging. In that moment, she realized that her journey to reclaim her royal heritage had only just begun, but she faced it with newfound courage and determination, knowing that her uncle stood by her side. In her desperate attempt to persuade her tyrant uncle to take her away, Ellie resorted to acting cute, clinging to his thighs, and even calling him daddy. Just as she began to believe that her plan had succeeded, he abruptly turned and departed, leaving her heartbroken. However, her sorrow was short-lived as news of the princess's discovery spread far and wide. Soon, Ellie and the entire empire were relocated to Panorge's castle, her new home befitting her noble status. Embracing her newfound identity, Ellie transformed her living quarters into a haven of pink and tenderness, adorning herself in clothes reminiscent of a sheep doll, a desire she had long harbored. However, her aunt's attempt to touch the delicate garments was met with a stern warning from the housekeeper, who displayed a villainous streak by threatening to ruin the clothes. Infuriated by the housekeeper's audacity, Ellie vowed to exact revenge in due time. It seems like Ellie's aunt had planned to take her for a walk, but their plans were disrupted by the sudden appearance of the housekeeper. Seizing control of the situation, the housekeeper forcibly took Ellie away, insisting that she be accompanied by 5 attendants if she wished to go outside. Frustrated by the housekeeper's interference, Ellie's aunt reluctantly acquiesced to the demands, arranging for Ellie's departure with a heavy heart, knowing that she would no longer be needed once the outing was over. As the time drew near for Ellie to part ways with Xiaoyi, the thought of separation weighed heavily on her heart, threatening to bring tears to her eyes. Overcome with sadness, she impulsively lashed out at the housekeeper, unleashing her frustration through a flurry of blows and kicks. The housekeeper, unable to withstand Ellie's fury, relented and swiftly returned the little princess to Xiaoyi, a small victory in Ellie's quest for revenge. Despite her triumph, Ellie knew that her actions would not go unpunished, anticipating a less than comfortable existence within the confines of the palace. Nevertheless, she remained determined to fulfill her duties as the imperial princess, eager to earn the admiration of her subjects. However, upon her arrival, Ellie's excitement was overshadowed by sudden illness, her body racked with discomfort and tears streaming down her cheeks. Concerned for her well-being, her uncle rushed to her side, his expression betraying his worry for his beloved niece. Inquiring about the cause of Ellie's ailment, he directed his anger towards the maid. Sensing her uncle's distress, Ellie intervened, reassuring him that Tessa Shin was not to blame for her illness. Despite her weakened state, Ellie remained steadfast in her loyalty to those who cared for her, determined to overcome her illness and fulfill her duties as the imperial princess with grace and resilience. Tessa's gentle touch on Ellie's cheek brought a sense of reassurance, comforting her niece with the assurance that everything would be all right. In response, Ellie reached out and clutched Tessa's fingers tightly, tearfully expressing her longing to return home. The constraints of palace life weighed heavily on the young princess, making it difficult for her to adjust. Upon hearing Ellie's plea, Tessa's initial fury gave way to concern. How could her once cheerful niece suddenly express such a desire to leave? Seeking clarity, Tessa summoned a spirit beast to shed light on the situation. With a puff of smoke, the spirit beast materialized, trembling in the face of Tessa's stern gaze. Despite her fear, the spirit beast bravely stepped forward, ready to fulfill her duty of unraveling the mystery. After carefully examining the situation, she discovered that the root of Ellie's distress lay in the overly strict treatment she received from the housekeeper. It was this lack of consideration for Ellie's feelings that had caused her daily anxiety and ultimately led to her illness. Moved by the spirit beast's revelation, Tessa confronted the housekeeper, holding her accountable for her actions. However, upon hearing the housekeeper's explanation and understanding her desire to preserve the royal family's honor, Tessa chose not to place blame but to address the situation, ensuring Ellie's well-being remained the utmost priority. With tensions diffused and misunderstandings cleared, Tessa vowed to create a more nurturing environment for Ellie within the palace walls. As Ellie became overnight into her role as a princess, she faced skepticism and scrutiny from many ministers within the royal court. Aware that any misstep could lead to suspicion from outsiders, he felt the weight of his newfound status bearing down upon him. As Tessa descended the staircase, he found himself face to face with Raphael, the very man he suspected to be his hidden enemy. His heart sank as he contemplated his presence within the palace walls. Raphael, the mastermind behind the demise of the late king, exuded a sinister aura that sent shivers down Ellie's spine. Despite his dark reputation, Raphael approached Ellie with false warmth, offering his greetings as though nothing were amiss. However, Ellie's intuition warned her of the danger lurking beneath his facade, prompting her to avert her gaze and even squeeze her eyes shut in apprehension. Though she could not articulate her fears, the cold sweat that broke out on her nervous face betrayed her anxiety. As Raphael presented the ring to the little princess, a wave of confusion swept over her. She recognized it immediately as her late father, the emperor's relic. How could such a precious royal artifact be in Raphael's possession? Before she could dwell on the implications, Raphael seized her hand, his gaze piercing as he inquired about her greatest desire now that she wielded great power. Unbeknownst to Ellie, Raphael's inquiry was not merely a casual question. With his cunning mind at work, he sought to unravel the depths of her desires and discern their potential impact on her future. Ellie sensed his ulterior motives, but she had no time to formulate a response before Raphael's grasp tightened. Feeling the weight of Raphael's scrutiny bearing down on her, Ellie experienced a sudden surge of panic. In a desperate bid to divert attention away from the probing question, she impulsively threw herself into Raphael's arms, seeking solace and refuge in his embrace. The abruptness of her action left her aunt and the maids bewildered and astonished, unable to comprehend the sudden change in the princess's demeanor. Ellie's actions sent a strange thrill through Raphael, causing his heart to race and his cheeks to flush with embarrassment. Despite his old age and sinister reputation, he couldn't deny the effect Ellie had on him. As Mode City came into view, Ellie's smile took on a wicked edge, a silent declaration of defiance against those who once sought to harm her. In a surprising encounter, Ellie came face to face with her half-brother. The revelation shook her to the core, stirring up emotions and memories she had long buried. Moments later, the little princess playfully grabbed Poo-Poo's tail, hoping to snag a piece of chocolate. However, Poo-Poo, the elf companion, refused to yield, instead taking Ellie on a soaring journey through the sky, ensuring her safety before returning her to solid ground. Yet, amidst the whimsy of her adventure, Ellie's attention was drawn to a solitary figure beneath a tree, a young boy with features reminiscent of a vampire. Intrigued, Ellie approached the boy, whom she identified as Sika, her half-brother. However, her joy was short-lived as Sika's presence brought to light painful memories of her mother's cruelty. In a heartbreaking revelation, Sika divulged the truth about their mother's abuse, blaming Ellie's mother for the scars that marred his face. Ellie's heart ached with empathy for her brother, as she grappled with the realization that the bonds of family could be tainted by betrayal and suffering. Sika recoiled in disgust at the sight of the little princess, his disdain evident in his demeanor. Despite his reaction, the princess couldn't help but feel compassion upon seeing the scars that marred Sika's face. With an instinctual desire to offer comfort, she reached out to touch him, only to be met with a defensive response as Sika instinctively pushed her away, fearing an impending attack. Understanding Sika's apprehension, the little princess employed her magical abilities to gently compel him closer, dispelling any sense of hostility. In a gesture of goodwill, she offered Sika a piece of chocolate, a simple yet earnest attempt to bridge the gap between them. As Sika hesitantly accepted the chocolate, he began to lower his guard, recognizing the kindness within the little princess. Engaging in a brief exchange, the two shared a moment of connection amidst the tranquil setting of the woods. However, their interaction was abruptly interrupted by the call of the princess's aunt, signaling her departure. With a start, Sika fled like a startled bird, disappearing into the depths of the forest. In the days that followed, the little princess found herself yearning to reunite with Sika, longing for the companionship they briefly shared. Determined to see him again, she enlisted the help of Poo-Poo, tempting the elf with promises of chocolate in exchange for guiding her back to the woods where they had met. Faye, unwilling to let the little princess grab onto her head and feet, instead caused the princess to faint and tumble off Poo-Poo's back. To her surprise, she found herself precariously perched atop Sika's head, the very person she had sought to comfort moments before. Despite the throbbing pain in his head, the princess remained composed, reassuring Sika even as blood trickled down her forehead. Unaware of the injury he had sustained, Sika attempted to save face by boasting of his strength, claiming he could easily carry 10 children like the princess. He accepted the princess's introduction of Puff and gratefully received the chocolates offered to Puff. The princess understood the depth of Sika's loneliness and isolation. Deprived of friends and even the love of her own mother, Sika found solace in the simple act of kindness extended by the princess. Moved by the kindness shown to her, Sika embraced the little princess tightly, his tears flowing freely as he poured out his emotions. Overwhelmed by Sika's heartfelt outburst, the princess struggled to find the words to explain their connection. Despite her efforts, her infantile state left her unable to articulate her thoughts, leaving her on the brink of tears. Sensing the princess's distress, Sika gently caressed his head and reassured him with heartfelt words, expressing gratitude for the chocolates he had received. With a promise to return the favor in their next meeting, the two parted ways, their hearts warmed by the bond they had forged. However, upon his return home, Sika was met with his mother's stern gaze, her expression filled with disapproval. Ignoring Sika's fear, his mother admonished him for disobeying and venturing outside. Yet, as she noticed the chocolate clutched in Sika's hand, her demeanor softened slightly, a silent acknowledgement of her son's small act of rebellion. Despite his mother's warning, Sika's resolve remained unshaken. With determination in his heart, he braced himself for the consequences, knowing that the memory of his fleeting encounter with the little princess would sustain him through whatever challenges lay ahead. As the day of the little princess's canonization ceremony dawned, anticipation filled the air. The emperor's uncle bestowed upon her the royal surname, marking the beginning of her official status within the empire. Excited at the prospect of dressing up for the occasion, the little princess eagerly awaited her aunt's emergence in splendid attire. To her dismay, her aunt appeared in simple clothing, a decision enforced by the housekeeper to ensure she could attend to her needs at a moment's notice. The little princess couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment. She longed for her aunt to experience the joy of dressing up, especially after all her hard work caring for her. Despite her aunt's reassurance that being with the little princess brought her the greatest happiness, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Summoning Pupu, she declared her desire to escape the confines of the palace, yearning for freedom from the expectations and constraints placed upon her. Pupu's playful antics brought unexpected chaos as he flew off with the little princess's clothes in his mouth before anyone could react. As the garments vanished into the sky, a flurry of flower decorations tumbled from the princess's hair, landing on a green-haired boy below. Bewildered by the sudden turn of events, the boy looked up just in time to see the little princess hurtling towards him. In a moment of instinctive reflex, the green-haired boy caught the falling princess in his arms, their eyes locking in a silent exchange of surprise and curiosity. The boy couldn't help but feel a flutter of excitement at the sight of the handsome princess, his mind already buzzing with ideas of potential collaborations in fashion design. However, their fleeting moment of connection was interrupted by the arrival of the anxious aunt, who wasted no time in leaping down from the palace walls to retrieve the princess. Snatching the little princess from the green-haired boy's arms, she bristled with tension as she addressed him. Caught off guard by the sudden confrontation, the green-haired boy inquired about the child's identity, prompting the aunt to reveal that the little princess stood before him. Surprised by the revelation, the boy's demeanor changed as he regarded the princess. He introduced himself as Pietro, expressing gratitude for being appointed as a baron due to his father's passing. Before he could inquire about the princess's aunt, Emperor Tessa made his appearance, resplendent in festive attire for the canonization ceremony. Tessa, adorned in regal garments, approached with a stern countenance, fixing his gaze firmly on the little princess. Sensing his intense scrutiny, the princess couldn't help but wonder about Tessa's intentions. Despite her anticipation of reprimand, the little princess was surprised when Tessa instead embraced her warmly, expressing gratitude to Pietro for his role in saving her life. Moved by Tessa's unexpected display of kindness, the princess's heart swelled with gratitude. As Tessa instructed her aunt to change into new attire for the ceremony, the princess couldn't help but reflect on the depths of cruelty she had witnessed.